Intercollegiate athletics at Arizona State University can trace its roots back to the late 1890s, when the university was still known as the Tempe Normal School, a teacher's college, and students were known as normals. In 1897, the university fielded its first intercollegiate football team and finished its inaugural season with an 0-1 record following a 38-20 loss to the Phoenix Indian School. Its first winning season came 2 years later, including a win in the first edition of the Territorial Cup with an 11-2 victory over its rival, the University of Arizona. Since then, intercollegiate athletics at Arizona State has expanded dramatically. The department sponsors 26 varsity sports for both men and women. Despite this growth and expansion in the number of opportunities it provides for collegiate athletes, the current system has branched out in two different directions. One model that is semi-professional, focused on the sports that drive revenue and funding for the athletic department and university, football and men's basketball. The other model focuses on the sports that do not create any revenue for the school, which includes sports like track and field, soccer, softball, and swimming. These sports are collectively known as Olympic sports, given their prevalence in the Olympic Games every 4 years. This documentary explores the history of the development of intercollegiate athletics at Arizona State and how things have changed drastically since the 1890s, particularly the professionalization of college football and men's basketball since the second half of the 20th century, and its impact on Olympic sports and Olympic athlete development.
Between two great teams. Good for 20 yards. Down to the Florida State 18, and ASU is threatening again.
During the first half of the 20th century, intercollegiate athletics at Arizona State developed and grew steadily. However, the program was not all that well known outside of the western United States. When now legendary head coach Frank Kush took over the football program in 1958, that changed.
Danny White engineers a drive that takes his team down to the 9. Here's a screen pass to Joe Pettit.
During his time in Tempe, he won 176 games, led the Sun Devils to 7 Western Athletic Conference titles and 6 wins in 7 bowl games, including the 1970 Peach Bowl and 1975 Fiesta Bowl, which capped 2 undefeated seasons.
Purpose back, Steve Holden on the 32-yard line. Watch the blocks open up right down the alley. Holden cuts right through the entire Seminole ball club. Rushes up the middle, 68 yards, a punt return to give
the program's increased success brought greater national attention to Sun Devil athletics, particularly the football and men's basketball programs. This increase in exposure for the Sun Devils, coupled with a move from the Western Athletic Conference to the Pacific 10 Conference in 1978, brought the Sun Devils to even greater prominence and gave them a chance to compete against powerhouse West Coast programs like the University of Southern California and the University of California, Los Angeles.
in for the score. And Don Eckstein's point after, with 34 seconds left in the game, gives ASU a 45-38 lead. Described it as the most exciting postseason game of the year.
However, this increase in stature also opened the door to greater revenue for football and men's basketball via increased television broadcast rights contracts, beginning the era of professionalization in those sports.
They found the winning formula late in the 1976-77 season. Those exciting young Sun Devils were unbeatable at the finish, won their last 5 games, looked like champions in the making. Looking good? How about Pacific Athletic Conference membership? Coming up in 1978, UCLA, USC, Stanford, and other Pac-10 powers will soon be annual visitors to the ASU Activity Center. It's all there. The exciting team, Ned Welk's crowd-pleasing racehorse offense, and the most ambitious home schedule in years.
As the second half of the 20th century progressed, Several changes to college sports came about as a result of Title IX, a landmark piece of federal legislation passed in 1972 that prohibited gender-based discrimination in sports programs. This new law had a dramatic impact on intercollegiate athletics, as it increased the number of women's programs at the university, including gymnastics, women's basketball, and women's golf. Title IX created more opportunities for women to continue their athletic careers post-high school, while enabling them to get an education. Additionally, the new legislation helped strengthen the College to Olympics pipeline that had begun to take shape. With the introduction of new programs in sports like gymnastics and track and field, the pool of talent for the United States Olympic Committee, from which they could select athletes, grew significantly larger and stronger. This led to stronger showings for American teams in the next several Olympics, and a better case for the development of the College to Olympics talent pipeline, which happened through the further professionalization and increased revenue of major college football. The end of the 1980s saw the rise of what would soon become one of college sports' greatest dynasties, the Arizona State women's golf team. Under the tutelage of another now legendary Sun Devil head coach, Linda Volstead, who also played golf for the Sun Devils in the late 1960s and moved into coaching in the early 1970s, the women's program dominated the sport, winning a record 6 national championships throughout the 1990s. Rosters included several Sun Devil Hall of Famers: Keely Booth, Brandy Burton, Emily Klein, Grace Park, and the current Sun Devil women's golf head coach, Missy Farkay.
Arizona State University was founded in 1885 and is...
For Linda, it was an opportunity to not only showcase the strength of her program, but to also plant a flag for women's sports at the collegiate level nationally and help further growth within the space across all sports, not just in golf, and help create a movement that still continues today in 2025, more than 50 years after the passage of Title IX.
Number 18, par 4, 471 yards long. Pete Dye's signature golf hole at the ASU golf course. Again, playing into the prevailing wind. If it's not long enough, it will be with the wind. A shot off the tee will require the player to hit it over the water and back in left to right to the fairway. However, if the shot is hit too far right, it will catch 2 bunkers right of the fairway. If so, the player is almost assured of not hitting the green in 2 and making at least bogey. The second shot will probably be played from about 200 to 220 yards from the green. A very small kidney-shaped green protected again by the lake that borders all the left side. A true great finishing hole in golf.
Stadium here on campus in Tempe, ASU and the California Bears, 2 teams in the middle of the Pac-10 standings. Both are trying to play their way into the NCAA tournament.
Another ASU program that took advantage of Title IX in the late stages of the 20th century and early part of the 21st century was the Sun Devil softball program. From 1980 through 2010, Arizona State made the NCAA postseason tournament 8 times, including a stretch of 4 in a row from 2006 to 2009. This run also included 2 national championship victories in 2008 and 2011. In addition to success on the national stage, Arizona State softball produced 2 Olympians from the softball diamond in the early to mid-2000s, as Stacey Farnsworth and Linda Wells both suited up for the Greek national team at the 2004 Athens and 2008 Beijing Summer Games, respectively.
Very strong for her 196 plus innings pitched.
It's a lot of innings, but not uncommon when you take a round look at the Pac-10 and other schools. Pitchers really got to put the innings on these days. A lot of games, they're playing 60-plus game seasons, Jim.
Success for Sun Devil athletics was not limited to just the softball diamond or golf course during the latter years of the 20th century and early years of the 21st. Excellence existed on the basketball court as well.
As the years have gone on, Tiffany Washington, Tashara Carter, Adrian Williams, we talked about. Tiffany Elmore, 5'10", freshman out of Sacramento. Newman Sand, Christina Sand filling in for the injured Leah Combs. We'll talk about that. Kitchen and Tucker in the backcourt. For Chris Gobrecht, One of the great coaches in all of college basketball, her 20th year as a head coach, second at USC, the second winningest coach in the Pac-10 Conference. And for Charlie Turner-Thorne,
Charlie Turner-Thorne, who played for then Pac-10 rival Stanford under legendary coach Tara Vanderveer in the late 1980s, arrived at Arizona State in the summer of 1996 and steadily worked to raise the profile of the women's program during her 25-year career in Tempe. By the time she retired from the head coaching job, she was the winningest coach in Arizona State women's basketball history and the second winningest women's basketball coach in the Pacific 12 Conference's history with 488 victories, behind only her former coach at Stanford, Tara Vanderveer.
By Tiffany Washington, 6'2" junior from Lawndale, who comes up with the rebound.
And a little easy shot that Holt did not finish per se, and really got screened out well. But those are the kind of shots you really got to finish, and that's what Charlie Turner-Thorne was telling us before the game, is that those.
She also led the Sun Devils to 14 NCAA tournament appearances, 3 Pacific 12 titles, 2 regular season championships, and the first tournament victory in 2002, and 2 NCAA Elite 8 appearances, the only visits in program history. The end of the 1990s marked not only the start of a new century and new millennium, but also a new chapter in the history of Arizona State University athletics. The football program struggled quite a bit once Frank Kush stepped away, but rose to prominence again in the late 1990s with the help of quarterback Jake the Snake Plummer and legendary linebacker Pat Tillman, as they both helped the 1996 squad win the Pacific 10 championship and lead the team to the 1997 Rose Bowl, where they fell just short against the eventual champion, the Ohio State University Buckeyes of the Big Ten Conference. This era of Sun Devil football also meant an even greater uptick in national exposure than in the 1970s under Kush. With the advent of networks like ESPN and Fox Sports and the beginnings of a 24/7, 365 sports media news cycle with programs like SportsCenter and primetime games airing on national networks like NBC and ABC and ESPN. This increased media coverage also meant greater revenue for the program, but an environment, at least within the ecosystems of football and men's basketball, that felt more like a professional game than one played by amateur athletes attending a university.
And I guess it's appropriate that number 3 intercepts 3 passes in the last 30 seconds of the game, but only one of them counts. Meanwhile, Larry Smith looking for Larry Marmee, a man he tried to hire on a couple of occasions, and there is Larry Marmee in the last year of his contract. A lot of question about whether he'll be back, but it's been a very, shall we say, rosy beginning for Larry Marmee as he wins his Pac-10 opener.
As a result of this increased professionalization in college football and men's basketball, and the increased revenue for athletic departments overall, Olympic sports programs got stronger due to more resources. As a result, coaches and administrators began to look outside the United States and recruit international athletes to come and compete for American universities in intercollegiate athletic competition. The story of Ryan Whitting perfectly encapsulates this shift and the greater globalization of American collegiate athletics that occurred in the early years of the 21st century. While Ryan is an American and has competed for Team USA at the Olympics and in several world championships in the shot put, one of the events in track and field, he had several teammates who represented countries outside the United States at those same world championships and the Olympic meets. Now an assistant throws coach at Arizona State, where he helps train those athletes who compete in the same events he once did. He uses the college to global event pipeline as part of his recruiting pitch when finding new talents. Coach Whitting asserts that Arizona State is the, quote, best throwing school in the entire country, end quote, and does a phenomenal job of preparing athletes for success at the international level, because every runner or field athlete who competes for Arizona State is going up those same athletes they might face at the Olympics or World Championships down the line. As American college sports continues to move towards a more professionalized model with the rise of athlete compensation via name, image, and likeness, proposed revenue sharing, and roster limit models, there are still many unanswered questions. However, one thing is certain. Those in leadership roles in both collegiate athletics and higher education need to step up and figure out how to make the system work for everyone. the athletes, the coaches, their fellow administrators, and the fans, and continue to figure out a way to make sure the college to Olympic pipeline remains strong.